Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. So today, we're diving straight into the architecture of this really incredible, fast-growing international movement called Equality Bridge. Now, if you follow global development at all, you already know that youth engagement is a massive buzzword right now. But Equality Bridge, they're doing something totally different. They're actually flipping the script on how young people operate on the global stage, transforming them from just, participants sitting on the sidelines into actual drivers of sustainable development.
Which brings us to a really fascinating question. What would actually happen if we stopped treating young people as mere beneficiaries of aid and started treating them as the architects of the future? I mean, really think about that for a second. Because this isn't just some theoretical thought experiment. It's literally the core operational thesis of the entire organization we're looking at today. They operate on the belief that youth already have the knowledge and the creativity to solve the world's most pressing challenges. They just need the platform to actually do it.
So to understand how they're building this platform, here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll look at the youth leadership gap. Then, building the equality bridge. Third, their global youth network. Fourth, how they go about turning ideas into action. And finally, we'll look ahead to the next global changemakers.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the youth leadership gap, identifying the problem.
Every great movement has an origin story. And this one starts with a youth advocate from Pakistan named Ma Galara. Well before Equality Bridge was even a thing, Ma Galara was already doing the heavy lifting at the grassroots level. We're talking reaching over 1,500 students across more than 20 schools in her country. She was out there on the ground, having real conversations. And her dedication actually led to these high-level advocacy meetings with the leadership of UN Women Pakistan, which included the head of the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa office and their country representatives. But through all of this, from sitting in local classrooms to these big UN offices, she noticed this glaring gap. Young people were wildly passionate, right? They had so many creative ideas for solving community issues, but the actual leadership opportunities, they were kept in the hands of a very small few. There just simply weren't pathways for most passionate young folks to take the lead.
And that observation perfectly illustrates the exact paradigm shift she set out to create. Think about the traditional approach. In a lot of societies, youth are encouraged to maybe, participate in conversations about development, but they're fundamentally viewed as passive beneficiaries of change. They're invited to sit at the table, sure, but they don't get to write the menu. The Equality Bridge approach completely shatters that old hierarchy. They see youth as active leaders, equal partners in designing and implementing solutions. They aren't just sitting around waiting to be saved, they are actively building the solutions, right alongside governments, civil society, and international organizations.
Which brings us to Section 2, building the equality bridge, our core philosophy.
So, to really get this, we have to look at how they define equality. For them, it's this foundational belief that every single individual deserves absolutely equal opportunities to learn, lead, and participate, period. Opportunities should never be gated by your gender, your nationality, your economic background, your religion, or where you happen to live. It's this strict, unwavering commitment to creating an inclusive space where anybody with the drive to lead actually gets the chance to participate in a meaningful way.
And then we have the bridge part of the name. A bridge symbolizes connection, right? In a world that so often defaults to competition or working in silos, this organization emphasizes international cooperation. It's all about building bridges between different cultures, between generations, and across nations. They are fundamentally committed to fostering dialogue over division. Because let's face it, global challenges require collective solutions, and building that bridge is exactly how they get there.
Moving on to Section 3, a global youth network, scaling the impact. What's really mind-blowing here is the sheer speed of their international expansion. I mean, Equality Bridge started out as a local initiative, but it has rapidly exploded into a global network that spans over 20 countries. They've got members and global youth ambassadors representing incredibly diverse cultures, entirely different educational systems, and multiple languages. It just goes to show that this model of youth empowerment truly resonates universally. It completely transcends borders. And that massive geographic footprint, it translates to some very real human impact. Through their workshops, their educational outreach, leadership initiatives, and community projects, they have directly engaged and empowered more than 6,000 young people. Just put that into perspective for a second. That's 6,000 minds now equipped with critical thinking, leadership capacity, and a real drive for civic participation. They treat every single interaction as a chance to spark a brand new change maker.
But how on earth do they manage all of that talent? Well, they use this really cool system called a leadership pathway. Unlike a lot of organizations where you might get stuck as a passive volunteer forever, Equality Bridge is built on continuous growth.
You start out as a member, just learning the ropes. If you show initiative, boom, you step up to an active contributor. From there, you can become a project leader or a committee member. The real standout leaders, the ones consistently creating community impact, are chosen as global youth ambassadors, where they serve as official representatives for their country. And eventually, you can even move up into senior leadership to mentor new members globally. It's a total meritocracy based entirely on your commitment and your service.
Let's look at how that actually plays out on the ground. In Section 4, turning ideas into action, creating real impact. So how exactly do these young leaders solve complex problems? They rely on a decentralized, 5-stage cyclical framework. First up is identifying needs. This is where members look closely at their own unique communities to figure out exactly where intervention is needed. Second is strategic planning, setting clear objectives, concrete timelines, and expected outcomes. Third, project development, which is all about transforming those raw ideas into structured, evidence-based programs. Fourth is community implementation, getting out there on the ground with workshops, campaigns, or volunteer projects. And finally, the 5th stage is evaluation. They rigorously review their outcomes to ensure continuous improvement and accountability. It is an incredibly professional, highly structured approach to grassroots action. And the formats for all this action? They're incredibly diverse. They aren't just doing typical short-term volunteering. They run school outreach programs to facilitate grassroots dialogues on civic engagement. They organize international conferences, bringing brilliant minds together for cross-cultural problem-solving. They also place a huge emphasis on research, conducting policy analyses and evidence-based advocacy because, well, they firmly believe young people should be the ones informing policy. And of course, they leverage digital media, using virtual campaigns and the Equality Bridge podcast to share knowledge across borders. It really is a multi-pronged approach to driving social impact.
I think their unique philosophy is best captured in their own words, with this quote: "Meaningful change begins within communities but grows stronger through international cooperation and shared learning." I love that. They don't just try to copy-paste identical solutions all over the globe. Instead, they empower local leaders to solve unique, highly localized challenges with total autonomy while backing them up with this massive international network for shared learning. It's the ultimate example of local action for global impact.
Finally, let's look ahead. Section 5, the next global changemakers, our future roadmap.
Equality Bridge has laid out a super ambitious 5-year vision stretching from 2026 to 2031. Their goal? To become one of the absolute leading youth-led organizations in the world. To make that happen, they're planning to establish comprehensive leadership academies and international fellowship programs. They are significantly expanding their youth research initiatives to tackle big, emerging global challenges. And they're really doubling down on technology, expanding their digital platforms, launching online courses, and hosting virtual conferences to guarantee that any young person, no matter where they live, has access to these amazing resources.
So you might be wondering, how can you actually get involved? Well, if you want to be part of this network, you totally can. You just apply during their official recruitment periods. And the absolute best part about their selection process is what they're actually looking for. They aren't just scanning a resume for past achievements, and they certainly don't care about your financial background. Selection is based entirely on your dedication, your willingness to learn, and a genuine commitment to community service. They value your potential and your enthusiasm over pretty much everything else. Equality Bridge has already proven that young people are entirely capable of shaping more peaceful, inclusive, and sustainable societies right now, today. They don't need to sit around and wait for their turn. So, the big question for you is, are you ready to stop waiting for change and start building the bridge yourself? Thank you so much for hanging out with me for today's Explainer. Keep learning, keep leading, and I'll catch you next time.